Following Sasuke's ominous introduction from the shadowy depths of Orochimaru's lair till his final showdown against the alien god, progenitor of chakra, and later the strongest shinobi to ever live, the question of just how strong is Sasuke has sat firm on the minds of fans. So today, let's find out just how strong is Sasuke Uchiha throughout Shippuden. Subscribe, shooting for 20k, let's go. Following their dramatic battle and Naruto's ultimate defeat 2 years ago, once returning, the only man on Naruto's mind was Sasuke Uchiha, who's been under the spell of Orochimaru for the last 2 years, training extensively. And on that fateful day, we see that they actually do meet up, with Sasuke standing far above his once beloved comrades, as if to show the difference in the paths which they have now taken, which also indicates perhaps the sheer level of power Sasuke has achieved in light of Naruto's growth, completely blitzing him through body flicker, with even Kakashi's near rival Yamato instantly noting that Sasuke is fast. Even Sakura didn't even see him move, despite the fact that she could battle Sasori, who participated in the assassination of 2 Kazekage, one of which was the strongest Kazekage ever, having been hailed as the strongest shinobi for a period of time, likely due to his Iron Sand being even more feared than that of Shikaku the One-Tailed. Yet this base Sasuke, who within these moments isn't even quite serious as like he is when he takes on later bouts like both Itachi and Deidara. His facial expressions get much more serious and animated, yet here, he's just completely calm, fighting 1 elite Jonin and 2 other powerful shinobi, but in the face of Sasuke, this doesn't even really matter, as nearly 2.5 years have passed, and in that time, Sasuke Uchiha has transformed into a wrathful demon, driven solely by vengeance. His chakra is now so vile and his ocular powers are now so adept, it reminds Kurama of one man, and one man alone: Madara Uchiha. Even Sai grabs Sasuke, prompting him to literally compliment him with a blank face, while Naruto literally jumps on him and Yamato fires wood style, but this Sasuke just destroys the entire combo attack with Chidori Stream, emitting lightning from his entire body, powerful enough to completely splinter and break even the wood style, which thus far in the series has acted as though it's still the heavenly gift of power it once was, with Databook 2 hailing it as an all-powerful technique capable of offense, defense, capturing enemies, and we saw that even in the battle against the strongest fire style in the entire world, water style capable of blocking that, and a mud wall capable of blocking even more water style than that, the wood style stands out as the strongest, using Hashirama's life force, which both the Edo body and Yamato have, as a legendary ninjutsu, yet despite it only being cut up by the strongest animal summon in the entire world, Sasuke in just his base Sharingan state can also break it up, and while yes, it's on a minuscule level, the principle is what I'm noting here, as we know that he has much higher level lightning style like Kirin, which he even attempts to use here, except Orochimaru stops him, fitting with how he later can literally just jump out of the wood style trap, which would be much larger and more powerful than the more minor boards used prior against Sasuke and in restraining Four-Tails Naruto himself, which is pretty crazy all things considered, with Sasuke's final note being that neither he nor Orochimaru are technically strong enough to defeat Itachi, so he would give his life over to that monster many times over, so long as vengeance is achieved. With that being said, it would be within this very interaction that the true battle would begin. Both Team 7 and Sasuke have 6 months to get stronger, as Sai proclaims to Naruto, who's just been acknowledged as one who could even take on Akatsuki members. As he's crying on the ground due to his weakness, Naruto's realization would set in. He's not strong enough to bring back Sasuke. In fact, Sasuke's become too strong, where Kakashi then rebuts this by noting that, well, in that case, you just need to get even stronger than that, implying that Kakashi's belief in the level at which Naruto could grow to would set him above the benchmark of Sasuke that they currently have. And as the conversation continues, Sakura states that, according to Lady Tsunade, it's possible that they are augmenting his training with drugs and forbidden jutsu, prompting Kakashi to state that, which is why there's only one way that we can super accelerate our own growth. acknowledging that the only thing they can do to match Sasuke's training is to have Naruto split countless clones to merge thousands of hours of training into just a few, cramming in over 400 days of raw solo training, and obtaining a jutsu capable of one-shotting literal immortal Akatsuki members on par with Konoha's strongest Jonin, Kakashi himself, which was something Kakashi previously did warn Naruto about, noting that this super accelerated training may even allow Naruto to surpass Kakashi, which Kakashi then concedes to when the Rasen Shuriken is in play at the end of the Kakuzu battle, which, according to his own admission, would have forced him to be hospitalized even more if he were to win, which would require Kamui, with Kakashi still arguing that Naruto is on par with him without the Rasen Shuriken later. Yet, despite this, despite surpassing Kakashi and killing a literal Akatsuki member, he still thinks about the previously seen base Sharingan Sasuke as still superior to himself. Naruto, even with well over a year of training, isn't confident that he could beat a Sasuke with 6 months of less training. The Naruto Kizuna Earthscroll guidebook commentates on this moment, adding some helpful insights stating that with absolute confidence in the new jutsu he acquired through intense training, he volunteers to go in alone. Wielding the technique born from his true potential, Naruto sees the battle not just as a mission, but as a trial he must overcome if he ever wants to reach the friend who lies far beyond his grasp. This statement notes a few things for why Naruto believes that Sasuke by nature is still superior to himself, as the Rasen Shuriken is the literal embodiment of his true potential, yet is only something he needs to be Kakuzu if he ever wants to reach Sasuke. Not that this trial will allow for him to surpass Sasuke or reach his level. No, he has to be Kakuzu to even want to be able to reach Sasuke's level, who, mind you, is still being thought of as his pre-6-month self. And while many people attributed Sasuke's growth to his absorption of Orochimaru much later, that isn't even really true, as by nature, the absorption technique is Sasuke just taking in Orochimaru but suppressing his chakra so that he is the main acting person of the vessel, hence to why he only comes out once Sasuke is completely drained and nearly crippled at the end of the Itachi fight. He does still gain some benefit insofar as he gained the affinity to snake-prone abilities, now having access to that chakra, or at least that chakra is within the body, giving the body the affinity to those sorts of things, but Sasuke doesn't necessarily get any power, as I've gone over before. In truth, Sasuke's true power has and continues to come from his training, something hailed as his foremost method of increasing his power, as Fanbook 2, which covers even up to the Kage Summit, states, quote, "It has been 3 years since Sasuke visited Orochimaru's hideout. Sasuke, who has matured considerably through his incredible training, is becoming more and more determined to take revenge against Itachi. Sasuke's desire to take revenge on Itachi has grown even more," end quote. Which in total grants Sasuke not only the idea of how his training, of which he gets 6 more full months beyond where Naruto and Kakashi would be estimating from, except now his hatred continues to grow, which as a source has allowed for Sasuke to grow unrecognizably more powerful through morphing his chakra into a colder and thicker source of power, as we'll touch on in the Kage Summit section. But for here, note that Sasuke is getting more powerful through his supposed drug and forbidden jutsu enhanced training. But on top of that, he's gaining even more powerful chakra to then amp every single thing that he learns during the training, forcing me to call back to the previously mentioned statement that Sasuke has transformed into a wrathful demon driven solely by vengeance. Plus, on top of that, we mentioned him having Orochimaru's abilities like Snake Summons, Offensive Jutsu, the Aura Rebirth, and even Enhanced Recovery, allowing for him to recover from his training even faster, added to his arsenal. In my Sasuke vs Kakashi video, I went over the possibility that Sasuke is believed by Kakashi to be training at a level comparable to that of Naruto, or at least the training of Naruto would allow for him to potentially surpass the weaker Sasuke. Naruto then gets 9,800 hours of pure raw training, no chakra amps or enhanced recovery, which is equivalent to, as we mentioned, over 400 days of straight training. And since Kakashi notes that Naruto was advancing faster than expected, we can just be generous to Naruto and assume that his enhanced training is twice that of Sasuke's. It would still mean that Sasuke could potentially train for 6 months in 6 hours, meaning 1 month per hour, and this dude literally trains for 6 months, and not just a couple of days, 6 full months. So now imagine that training also still being of a higher quality than the original estimation due to the chakra changes. Hence to why Databook 3 remarks that Sasuke has potential to surpass even the entire Akatsuki with his current level of speed, taking away the breath from members like Deidara, who is the fastest of each member attributed to Team 7, being Deidara, Sasori, and Kakazu, with Deidara later in the war being equal to Onoki in flight speed, likely alluding to why Onoki much later in the Kage Summit still couldn't believe that Sasuke, who was fighting the Raikage relatively, could kill Deidara. Yet we see that Sasuke can still in many instances combat the very Deidara in flight speed. Furthermore, this elite Akatsuki level can further be pushed by how this Hebi Sasuke is actually implied to be superior to the initial Taka Sasuke with the MS, as we know that he wasn't fully recovered from the Itachi fight and lost his curse mark, which is why Sasuke wasn't blasting jutsu out left and right, but was relying on basic kenjutsu and even some genjutsu. We see that he can parry off many of Killer Bee's strikes and perform quite well, contrary to popular belief, despite this Bee actually only ever really being defeated by Kisame, who is actually relative to Itachi without the MS, as the Storm Generations game points out, aligning with the actual manga material, where in their introductions Kisame yields only to an MS Itachi, as opposed to the base one. Even the Akatsuki novel also supports this, but that's a different point. Leading me into Sasuke's magnum opus fight being against his brother, Itachi Uchiha. Now, while yes, it's important to preface that Itachi clearly wasn't trying to kill Sasuke, and if he were, Sasuke would be dead, as stated by Obito, which fits the point that using this as a criticism for Sasuke's performance is just somewhat ignorant, seeing as there are very few people in the entire world at this point who could go toe-to-toe with Itachi. So Sasuke's performances against lower forms of Itachi speak volumes about his power. Now, I want to divulge into another point and then relay it back to this one. As we see throughout the Itachi fight, Sasuke uses an absurd amount of jutsu. Shuriken, Kunai, Genjutsu, and I kid you not, 9 Chidori, on top of other minor expenditures and his fatigue from just fighting over this period of time. And while yes, we've shown that Sasuke's powers at this point in the series are likely beginning to approach the Kage tier, staying far above any elite Jonin shinobi, yet still inferior to perhaps the Sannin, like Jiraiya. However, despite this, Sasuke has multiple abilities that allow for greater speed gaps to be bridged, like Snakes or Chidori Senbon. The former is actually able to completely catch and restrain the Four Tails Naruto, who was faster than Orochimaru when he was using them, with Sasuke being able to completely blitz Jugo and a fatigued Suigetsu, who later could combat lower forms of the 4th Raikage A. And while yes, I did note that Suigetsu was fatigued due to his hatred of walking, I guess, he did note a similar thing prior in the summit, so it should at least still stand that this Sasuke, at least at his peak, is relative to some of the Kage, which is more consistent in the opening of the next section. Many of the snakes which Sasuke now has access to actually bridge those speed gaps also have access to things like poison, and even notoriously strong members of the Akatsuki like Kisame can be caught off guard by those sorts of things. As in Akatsuki Hiden, we see that Kisame without Itachi's aid would have probably died to poisonous bees, yet Sasuke should have summoning contracts and jutsus that have over 1,000 poisonous snakes, each with lethal dosages, as to opposed to the bees' half-lethal dosages. We know that Sasuke himself also has a poison resistance from Orochimaru, which in Sasuke Retsuden is thought by Sakura to be one that can't be overcome, befitting with how Orochimaru, by virtue of once being Sasori's partner turned rival, might have actually put up defenses for it. But even taking Sasori as an example, poison is it's just monstrous in the series, and was also likely a reason for why Hiruzen, who was praised as the strongest Hokage, didn't hunt down Hanzo the Salamander during the Second War, showing how Sasuke also to some degree wasn't fighting to the utmost level, like in the same way that people usually grant to Itachi. Now, I'm not saying that Sasuke would just open the fight and one-shot Itachi with a lethal poison, but what I am saying is that it's not ridiculous to grant him some charity. Other snake summons even force Itachi to back off in the opening of the fight, at least as a shadow clone, which Sasuke was able to kill prior with his lightning, despite 30% clones of Itachi combating all of Kakashi's Team 7 at the same time. Sasuke's power by this point, in no exaggeration, is probably closer to a sick Itachi than to Naruto, which could be supported in how he actually just completely clotheslined Naruto on the way to this fight. So while yes, Sasuke is clearly inferior to his brother, he is monstrously strong by this point in the series. Look at it like this, right? Sasuke has some of the best physicals in the world right now, and has enhanced ones like Body Flicker, which put him in a tier of godlike speed that characters like Jonin Minato, the Raikage A, and Hokage Minato are a part of, but also can't be jumped due to Chidori Stream, can't be Ninjutsu Barrage due to Chidori Senbon, the fastest form of Chidori. He can fight literally any summon in the entire world. He can battle any character, including even the 8-sword wielding Killer Bee and Kenjutsu, whose skills are hailed in the Naruto Kizuna Heaven Scroll to be like dancing, so even master swordsmen find it hard to read, fitting with how the Boruto database touches on Boruto's elite swordsmanship developed by Sasuke. Sasuke has literally mastered his 3 Tomoe Sharingan to track abilities, has precognition, can use Akatsuki level Genjutsu. I mean, he can literally fly. I can go on and on, but the point is, Hebi Sasuke, though not so some Sannin Slayer, is a monster. Sasuke through the 5 Kage Summit has developed quite differently than his Hebi counterpart, now having gained and actually honed the Mangekyo Sharingan at the cost of most of his original snake-prone abilities, and even though Sasuke's Summit performances were actually extremely good, defining his true power as one that stands rightfully at the peak of the shinobi world, fighting the Kage, who are stated in chapter 357 synopsis statement, Gaara Hiden, Rasa's 2nd databook file, Oniki's 4th databook file, fanbook 1, you get the point, to all be the strongest characters in the world, or at least in the known world. However, many people watching the series through the anime or external material like the Storm games tend to way underestimate his performance. The latter actually shows Gaara, for example, literally intercepting the Amaterasu, reacting to all of Sasuke's fire style, negating all of it a second time, then instantly sand coughing him, which literally never would have happened in the manga. It literally can't happen in the manga, and this tends to happen for each of the Kage interactions. So let's just go through each one of them and define by far the most underrated form of Sasuke and arguably any Naruto character. This misinterpretation lens is even more prominent in the Raikage fight, where most fans literally leave the fight thinking that Sasuke had lost this fight and the Raikage was the clear victor and more powerful fighter. However, this is just not true, not even in the slightest sense. For those who have watched my read-through of that fight, this probably has been heard before, besides some points, but the fight opens with Sasuke plowing down multiple samurai using the power of the MS, which is currently amplifying his power through making his chakra both colder and thicker, enhancing the quality of the chakra, which in turn drastically boosts ninjutsu, genjutsu, and taijutsu, as noted by Fukasaku when teaching Naruto about Sage Mode, which then gets corroborated upon by both Tobirama and Maguire from the Sakura novel, who discuss the chakra and its qualities in relation to the physical changes that it actually adheres to, where here Kari notes that his chakra is even colder and thicker than it was in his CM2 state previously, which could at least allude to the idea that Sasuke's ability to fight the Kage as it continues, he will completely eclipse his Hebi counterpart even at those peak forms. However, since we know that Hebi Sasuke has some higher physicals with jutsu, likely with the snakes being able to potentially get bridge some gaps, it should at least still be safe to assume that once Sasuke gets the 2nd chakra amp, it's over, if not prior to that due to the Susanoo coming out. A then, being aware of Sasuke's location, blasts through the wall already with his V1 cloak active, where he would then pummel Jugo while Suigetsu would be parried off by Darui. C states that A's nerve transmission when using the lightning chakra to augment his reflexes is on par with Konoha's Yellow Flash, which is in reference to the reputation earned by Jonin Minato. However, C concedes that the 4th war is his first time participating in a war, which fits with how he would have been like 7 during the 3rd war, so he simply doesn't really know what he's talking about, and the Raikage's power in relation to external sources thus far is still kind of ambiguous, although this could just be Kishimoto trying to portray a theme of Sasuke's combative level here. As we noted in the previous section on his body flicker note, we know Kishimoto does do this, like when he has Tenten called Neji's defense greater than Gaara's, despite her being KO'd during that fight, but he corroborates this in Databook 1, allowing for us to posit a reason for how Tenten could have known that, but I digress, it's just a possibility. However, chapter 461 does still conclude with an editorial note that A is now going to be serious. The V1A then tanks Jugo's curse mark explosion point blank, and Sasuke completely stun drops C, showing how both leaders of the opposing forces are vastly above their inferior comrades. Sasuke, noticing this very point, decides to engage A in his realm of advantage using lightning enhanced taijutsu to clash with the A's lightning enhanced taijutsu. The second fanbook details Kishimoto's thought process when designing the 5 Kage, where he heavily focuses on the Raikage, meaning to be a professional wrestler style of fighter, which is highlighted through potentially his Hulk Hogan inspired hair, and more importantly his wrestling championship belt around his waist. The blade then bounces off, and this 3 Tomoe Sharingan Sasuke charges straight at A from the side, who then responds as if to allow for him to have a fair fight, where the two then move at equal speed. However, Sasuke baited him into moving just forward into that linear motion, hence to another reason why he moved to his front side when he did have his back initially. Chapter 463 then opens. Sasuke can then use his Sharingan to precog the timing of A's strike, ducking under the strike, stabbing directly through the cloak and into A's pec. So, thus far, Sasuke has led the tide of battle, picking the plane at which he wants to fight on, countering the Raikage at his own game completely, whilst both are in their suppressed 3 Tomoe and V1 state respectively. However, with Sasuke besting A in the previous confrontation, A then unexpectedly grabs Sasuke whilst his hand is in A's chest to then Liger bomb him in that pro wrestling style. Sasuke certainly didn't expect the Raikage to grab him, where the Raikage would use enough force to cause these tension lines here, where he would wrap his arms over Sasuke's arms, grabbing right around his rib area, making it so that neither of Sasuke's arms would have any leverage to reach down and then force his way out of this. He then lifts Sasuke vastly above his head. A's still a tall dude, by the way, whilst both arms still have no leverage, and he's in the air and therefore can't jump out. Kari notes his chakra is growing even more, and Sasuke then gets completely blasted through the floor, with the focal point of all the damage being on his neck. Note that later. The smoke then clears, and A shows shock and questions Sasuke being alive, as Darui prior thought Sasuke would be dead. A rib of the Susanoo pops up on panel with a crack. Sasuke, caught off guard with no physical leverage, was being completely slammed, yet still activated a move to completely null a majority of the damage. A then realizes this and instantly goes for a downward chop while Sasuke is on his back, and yet with that Sasuke can completely blitz the Raikage using an arm of the Susanoo to form, get a grip on some rocks, and completely propel Sasuke out of the crater several meters away, where it's then revealed that Sasuke needed the MS, and A, seeing this, knows he can't compete and activates his full power version 2 cloak, which is essentially where more chakra is allocated to the lightning cloak to the point where A's hair flares up in the back. So with Sasuke getting the point in the first piece, who should actually get the point for this section of the interaction? And while it may seem obvious in saying A, I might disagree with you, as you'd have to contextualize that he was only able to Liger bomb Sasuke due to his unorthodox approach by grabbing Sasuke, where he would then be at a severe disadvantage, and still found a way to tank the fatal attack in the only possible time frame at which he could have done that, where he then did the exact same thing the next time. A went to strike, except he wasn't off guard and was only disadvantaged through him being on his back, yet he completely blitzed the Raikage's movements via the Susanoo and repositioned the battle in his favor. Therefore, while this, could be given to both, giving a point to each, I suppose, I still think certainly it should be declared that Sasuke could tank the best of what A had to offer while at his worst, and also making it known that his MS is just beyond the version 1 cloak. So I'm going to give this point to Sasuke, but just for charity, I'm going to give A half of a point on the basis that he was willing to make the stupid move and grab Sasuke while his hand was in his chest. As a quick note, in relation to his Hebi Sasuke form, I would venture to argue that in this form here with the Susanoo, the speed amp at which it provides for him to get out of that crater is likely greater than what the snakes would have previously offered him, and thus Sasuke now has a more potent chakra to enhance speed-based techniques like the Chidori Senbon with, meaning that Kage Summit versus Hebi Sasuke debate stops once Sasuke opens the MS here in the Summit. But back to the battle. Sasuke then, in response to A activating the V2 cloak, then decides to use the Amaterasu, another technique to use against Hebi Sasuke, blasting it out against A, who can utilize his top speed in the body flicker to then react to and then dodge the attack. Sasuke then turns his head to see A, who is no longer there, who is completely behind Sasuke, placing him at the disadvantage utilizing his superior speed. A then charges towards Sasuke with his left arm cocked back for a lateral bolt of pain, yet Sasuke, just following the official activation for the lateral bolt, then fully ignites the entire ribcage in Enton Kagetsuchi, his now acquired flame control, which I'll get into in a minute, which this piece right here is crucial and is by far the most pivotal point of scaling for Sasuke, as the Enton goes up completely whilst A is still moving. However, a common point of refutation would be that A halts his movement. However, this probably isn't true, at least in this panel, as the full Enton is erected when A's left foot is still close to his center of mass, and there are motion lines covering his whole body, indicating that he is in motion, and it's only in the next panel where that foot is then shown at an angle which would face outward, and the tension lines are now surrounding that leg, indicating how A is now pivoting his momentum after the fact, meaning that the Enton can fully erect relative to or greater than A's sideways propelled motion, still being of his peak combat speed. However, A also does mentally notice the flames in the same panel that it's erected, implying that they are directly faster than him. So, concerning speeds, this particular scene falls moot for both parties insofar as its result, as we know that A only blasted through due to, you guessed it, his stupidity. I mean, Karin then notes that nothing can match the Raikage's speed, so Sasuke defends himself in a way that A just can't attack him, which implies that A is still faster than Sasuke, but he can slightly keep up, and more importantly, to here it should be obvious that A wouldn't hit an Inferno flame-covered absolute defense, right? Well, I'll just let this terribly embarrassing image of Sasuke decide that. Chapter 464 opens with Sasuke coughing up blood with the same sound effects as Itachi from his Susanoo, showing newfound drawbacks. There's a large visible bruise on Sasuke's neck, indicating that A actually did strike Sasuke with his full force, but he simply tanked it, and is now in a disadvantageous position because of A's awkward decisions yet again. A is in midair with the guillotine drop, and Sasuke can react via erecting the Enton and shaping it into spikes that will then stab straight through A and killing him if this continues, but it doesn't. Gaara intercepts this leg drop from an unknown distance, activating his sand at an unknown time. Sasuke's reaction through the activation of the Enton is entirely valid, seeing as if this were to be merely gravity, while A being a 250-pound man, these are chakra-enhanced superhumans that we are talking about, and they are still, there's still something that's augmenting A's raw movement, which would be explained through the lightning cloak. So, who gets the point here? Well, again, similar to the last point, A just mimicked an even less expected move in striking the Enton, and Sasuke was caught off guard. However, he managed to completely tank it, and from this disadvantageous position on the floor, he's capable of completely igniting and forming the Enton to where it would stab and kill A. So, for Sasuke, he will get the actual point for further progressing the battle in his favor, but A can get half a point again for simply how much aura Sasuke lost in this panel, leaving the total score at the end of this battle 2-1 Sasuke's lead. However, for the last and final point, I want to address who would have won if it were to have continued where they left off, and well, as I put it before, A's poop chute was about to stop being an exit only. Enton was about to go straight through all of his organs from the bottom up, so obviously, if you disagree with the whole thing, Sasuke would have killed A, meaning that he would have walked out alive, and A would have been dead. Therefore, he won. But whatever, I'm not going to play that. Let's just argue that A gently floats away and is resuscitated, meaning that Sasuke is now unharmed after both of A's significantly landed strikes have been to the neck, leaving a pretty meaty bruise. A has a hole in his chest and is dripping blood, and an arm that needs to be amputated and rendered useless as it's covered in Enton. So now, he is missing an arm, which was the arm he went for the final blow with, and he immediately deactivates the cloak, whereas Sasuke then gets a massive amp to his chakra to the point where Karin notes it's even colder, putting the final nail in the coffin for Sasuke beating up his Hebi Sasuke counterpart. Now, while many people will question these chakra developments as being perhaps the demonstration of Sasuke shutting his eyes for the darkness he desires, this is true, but it's also correlated to power, as we know that Tobirama, after having studied the Sharingan specifically, states that there is no clan that feels deeper love than the Uchiha. Once an Uchiha knows love, it's almost as if all of his previously checked emotions are released, except that it is quite problematic. When an Uchiha individual writhes in agony over the loss of love, a unique chakra is released in his or her brain and reacts with the optic nerve. This phenomenon is called the Sharingan, the eye that reflects the heart. Now, here's where Tobirama's hypothesis is critical, as he states, quote, "The Sharingan taps into that person's heart, rapidly increasing his or her strength along with the power of their hate. The deeper the darkness gets, the greater the ocular powers become, until the person can no longer be stopped. Just like Madara," end quote. Delineating how each time Sasuke's darkness further consumes his heart, his chakra changes and he gets more power. You'll also notice that how in each of these amps, they all come with a greater change in the Susanoo size, alluding to more chakra being capable of being allocated to the Susanoo. We also know that both of the curse mark, insofar as using Kidomaru as the example, just hyperactivates the chakra points through its emulation of Sage Mode, where Jugo, according to Databook 4, quote, "absorbs the natural energy overflowing from the earth, transforming into a ferocious sage," implying that this particular unique chakra to the curse mark expands the chakra points in terms of raw Sage Mode. We know that Fukasaku notes that when you add it into your chakra pool, like another flavor of a swirl in ice cream, it then results in a more powerful chakra, which in turn gives you a real boost in ninjutsu, genjutsu, and taijutsu through amping other mental and physical pools which those come out of. Therefore, my point would just be that no matter how you want to say the physical boost develops, it has to be there in some regard, and he does indeed get much stronger from each and every amp, but I digress. Essentially, if you want to play the previous game, Sasuke would then go on to battle A using no longer a ribcage Susanoo, but a full skeletal Susanoo capable of wielding swords and putting A at a distance, while A is even weaker with a hole in his chest and an arm missing, now at a worse advantageous position. So tactically, this Summit Sasuke literally dominated A. Sasuke's opening interaction with Gaara would be Gaara rebuting A and the need for his intervention, stating that, quote, "If you would have continued your attack, you would have been further injured by the black flames," showing how even Gaara is willing to recognize that A can't fight Sasuke any longer at this point. Then, after Karin senses the conference room, Ao notes that he was aware of her doing such, and we cut back to Sasuke complimenting Gaara and how effective he is at blocking the Enton. However, while many people commensurate these flames to be the same as the Amaterasu, as to show Gaara's sand speed being ridiculous, this isn't really the case, as we know that it's not his Amaterasu, it's his Enton, and this strategy is actually really smart pressure. Pay attention to what Sasuke can do with the Enton. Essentially, he used Amaterasu once and lit the top of the Susanoo, where now he's using the Enton, Flame Control, to pull them out of the ball and toss them out at Gaara in these wisps. Databook 4 also makes note of this concept, stating once Amaterasu is already activated, the required chakra is relatively small, since it makes use of pre-existing flames. End quote. We then see that Darui jumps in to aid the combo attack, where he then fires his Laser Circus, Kankuro fires his Puppet Triad technique, Tamari fires her Cyclone Scythe technique, and Gaara lastly fires his Sand Shower Barrage, creating a massive explosion on the Susanoo. Yet this is where Sasuke now gets his V2 Chakra amp in terms of his Susanoo, which is now stated to be different, where he is now so cold according to Karin, with Sasuke now stating that he has an even greater absolute defense than Gaara's Sand. Also, pocket that diction for now, as we'll come back to it in the next section. Chapter 466 opens with, I kid you not, A literally hiding behind a pillar, where Sasuke then just decides that his defense will protect him. So he'll literally just collapse the ceiling on everybody, also leaving both Suigetsu and Jugo for dead, potentially alluding to him growing increasing callous for the sake of his goal. Another thing to note is that we actually know that Susanoo users can actually exit and act autonomously from their Susanoo, as we see Itachi do it at the end of the Nagato B and Naruto fight, Madara does it against the Desert Front, Kakashi does it against Kaguya, and Sasuke even does it as soon as he gets the EMS. However, if you'll notice here, he can actually do it with just his base MS2, as he has the Susanoo pick him and Karin up and put them into the closed off corridor, which is pretty interesting stock for Sasuke's abilities thus far. Following the Gaara battle, which he technically would also have won for the same reasons as the A fight, he then moves on to the conference room, and the Mizukage Mei decides to take the first charge after Sasuke clashes with Mifune, a once Hanzo the Salamander rival, and just as 3 Tomoe Sharingan state, he also does evade her lava style, although this attack was unnamed and just was seemingly more focused on closing off the doors, but perhaps is still a feat for Sasuke, but I would venture to say that it's just moot for both, as Chojuro then saw that attack, and then a couple pages later stated that here comes Lord Mizukage's Kekkei Genkai, her lava style jutsu, showing how he only notes it then, not in the prior instance. However, with his Ribcage Susanoo, Sasuke can block her Lava Monster Jutsu quite effectively even without his Susanoo melting. He then tanks a massive bit from Chojuro, blasting him through the lava, where Mei would then have him cornered in the hallway, for Sasuke to now be in the worst position possible, as now he's in such an enclosed space that the Susanoo can't really aid him at all. Furthermore, after Mei activates her Vapor Style, Solid Fog Jutsu, he then tries to activate the V2 Susanoo, but it literally just collapses due to his chakra fatigue. But at this point, this is where Zetsu then jumps in to aid Sasuke in his chakra, stealing it from the Gokage. But with that being said, let's briefly go back through and count the jutsu that Sasuke has actually used consecutively thus far, which is 2 base Chidori, 5 Chidori Katana, 2 Genjutsu, 2 Ribcage Susanoo, 2 Amaterasu, 5 Enton Kagetsuchi, 2 V2 Skeletal Susanos, and 1 Susanoo Sword, which in my opinion is actually pretty ridiculous when you also account for general fatigue that'd be setting in from the traveling and taijutsu. So Sasuke still doesn't slouch in stamina and literally is a chakra monster. Like, who else is running this gauntlet, like stamina wise, in the world at this time? Zetsu then recharges Sasuke to an unknown degree, and Mei states that she needs to change the pH level, implying that it would harm the other Kage like Tsuchikage Oniki, who then states that he can't believe this is the brat who took down Deidara, as Sasuke is on one knee, covered in his eye, and bleeding out more in his mouth, making me lean towards the Zetsu recharge being pretty minimal and pathetic. But he then gets out into the particle style and has to be saved from Oniki by Obito, giving Sasuke his one and only loss in the summit thus far, as we know that in terms of the fight, or the Mei fight, he was able to leave her in the corridor as he continued with his objective, and she wasn't able to stop him, which was her objective. Now, yes, Obito does save him, but pay attention to the sequence. Notice how Sasuke hasn't been impacted at all since the recharge, but is literally unconscious. That's how fatigued he is. Like, if he really even got half of his reserves, then he could still posit that he could do half of the jutsu that he previously did, but he does nothing. Not even 10% of those jutsu. So, note that going into our next section, the Danzo fight. Now, even though he hasn't been recharged, unless you argue that Karin does it when he's in the convoy space, which isn't unreasonable, as we know that his face is at least cleaned up a little more going into the Danzo fight, likely from Karin, but regardless, Sasuke's anger has festered to a boiling point, with Databook 4 noting that his darkness has gotten so deep, it swallows even the shadows themselves, and he is now so enraged that he even begins to overuse many techniques against Danzo throughout their fight, as noted directly by Obito. However, in doing so, it's safe to assert that this Sasuke is now certainly the strongest Sasuke we've seen in the summit thus far. This also does go to speak about Danzo and just how strong he is, which will be related back to Sasuke, as we know that the position of Hokage is power oriented, at least in some regard, insofar as it necessitates that one must be, of the peak level and not just Konoha, but the world, fitting with how Fu and Torne are stronger than any of the other guards. We also then see that Danzo can use Izanagi to place himself in positions where he can react to and combat the Susanoo, like here, where he respawns on the pillar, literally reacting to the Susanoo arm. Now, flashback to the Raikage bout, where even those arms and lower forms were nearly a blitz level difference, so this is pretty impressive. Yet Danzo can still react to them, and even physically react to the Amaterasu itself by putting up his arm, showing some pretty impressive physicals for this Danzo. Now, as Sasuke's fatigue sets in, we see that Danzo's wind style can hit and cut open Sasuke. However, Danzo would get the paralytic seal on Sasuke, as if to go cut his neck. Obito begins to kamui, and in that time frame, Sasuke, enraged, can erect the Susanoo for the external movement, showing just how high tier Sasuke is by this point, even in relation to Obito's slower speeds. Furthermore, this also leads me to make the note that Kisame, one of the stronger Akatsuki members, is shown in this very arc fighting B, the inferior to A, yet Sasuke had literally dominated A, performing better against the correlating forms than Kisame, and going on to get much stronger. This also fits with the narrative focus of this arc in terms of power, being that Naruto and Sasuke, who are equals at the end of this fight and arc, are now standing above the strongest fighters in the world, including the Kage, Jinchuriki, and Akatsuki members, a minor detail for the narrative that's commonly missed over. For Sasuke, Databook 4 corroborates much of his inner thoughts, noting that for Sasuke, the Kage represent the enemy that tormented his brother, and Sasuke is now willing to become a monster out of the love for his brother, like how Itachi once did for him in the massacre. Sasuke would betray Itachi's way of life if it meant wiping away the stain of disgrace he bore, at the cost of Danzo's life. Sasuke is now no longer just a kid under Kakashi's teachings or a protege to be used by Orochimaru, but a literal monster capable of killing nearly anybody on the planet. Now with that in mind, along with Danzo's power, Sasuke now unlocks the V3 humanoid Susanoo that now has the crossbow. And in gaining this, Karin notes that his chakra and power is now completely different than before, with Obito also monologuing that his rage has matured and gained in power, and his body is merely responding to it. Where then Obito states that this is going well, which is crucial, as previously in the conference room, Obito was kind of annoyed at Sasuke's performance, wishing for at least a hostage or two, but now he views Sasuke as fulfilling the expectation he once had. Sasuke's first attack in the Susanoo arrow, which is now far beyond the Susanoo, that Danzo can't even react to it in time, having to literally morph his arm into a tree. As Sasuke then kebabs him again, Obito makes the note that Danzo is planning to control the Nine Tails, which thus far has only been done by both he and Madara, with the exception for Fugaku and Thought in the anime. Danzo then summons the Baku and forces it to vacuum suck behind Sasuke to put more pressure on him and increase the potency of his own wind style, which did in fact rip the back off the Susanoo, yet Sasuke instantly counters the Baku with a fire style, fireball, and immediately punches Danzo. The Susanoo then begins to de-evolve once again due to his fatigue, forcing him to rely more on conservative methods like the Shuriken, like how he did in this battle against B, except he still did use a Chidori katana. Obito then, after believing this is the extent of Sasuke's power, does begin to complement his ability to wield weak genjutsu so well. Sasuke still goes on to use Chidori once again while deactivating his Sharingan, which he immediately forced back on, stabbing Danzo through the chest. However, once Danzo reversed tetragrams, ending his own life, Sasuke literally thinks he can go to Konoha and kill whoever he pleases there. However, Obito literally calls out this blind rage, stating that he's overused his ocular powers and won't be able to go there and do much at all. Sakura shows up as Sasuke lights up another Chidori, and even Sakura can notice just how different Sasuke is by this point. However, it doesn't stop there, as he goes on to scuffle with Kakashi while still deathly fatigued, and though we don't see it during the time frame we cut away, the two unleash ninjutsu at one another according to the Naruto birthday columns, which also notes that Sasuke is now blinded by his vengeance and intent to kill, which we've kind of hinted at prior. After both he and Naruto confront each other, Sasuke stands before the friend who once walked beside him, realizing the two are equally matched. Being of the same level as they are in their final valley encounters, Sasuke sets off, disappearing into the darkness once again. Seeking the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan as a means for eternal light, a light that may gleam through the darkness, he takes on Itachi's eyes, which make him instantaneously more powerful. Now, before I go too much further into this section, I want to preface that my friend TG has done a really well thought out analysis of EMS Sasuke's powers, so if you want a super detailed explanation, then check that out, but I'll still toss up a lot of the same points here, just thought I'd mention it. After peeling off the bandages and putting white Zetsu to the wall and killing some more, we see that something pretty interesting is actually occurring, in that if you recall Sasuke's ability to plant the Amaterasu and use the Inton to wisp it out, like he originally could only do 3 wisps in the summit, whereas now he can casually do 5 with the Naruto Road to Ninja's Secret Guidebook, a manga canon guidebook released alongside volume 61, along with other pieces of material like miniature build-up mangas that come with box set 3 of the manga, and numerous artworks and magazine covers for this movie. In this guide, it states that Sasuke now has an ultimate absolute defense. And if you recall, the diction absolute defense is actually a categorical term that Sasuke hailed himself to be in alongside Gaara, though better than Gaara, and other characters like Neji Hyuga, except there is actually one other person, Itachi Uchiha. In Fanbook 2, which covers up through part of the 5 Kage Summit as a 10-year anniversary guide, Itachi's spirit weapons are stated to be an ultimate absolute defense, where now, Sasuke finally, according to Databook 4, has ninjutsu and ocular techniques surpassing that of Itachi, hence to why the two are finally recognized as equals, despite Sasuke having genjutsu that was a far cry below Itachi's at the end of the summit, where now the lone Uchiha is finally as powerful as his brother and surpasses him in some regards, like how his Inton Kagetsuchi is now developed to be the greatest offensive ocular ability, which can now be coupled with arguably the greatest defensive ocular ability in the Susanoo. So just for an early EMS Sasuke, we can be really confident saying that he could stomp the entire summit and is vastly above the tier of his Kage Summit self really at any point in time. now standing on the level and even surpassing his brother, who could kill Obito, the strongest man on the planet, if he knew everything about him. So EMS Sasuke is quite monstrous. One thing commonly overlooked concerning this Sasuke is that he still has the hatred growth. People tend to only apply that to the Kage Summit Sasuke variant, but it applies to other forms like Hebi, even more so EMS Sasuke as well. Now, before we move out of the preface for Sasuke's base power, let's establish that Sasuke's potential is now almost limitless. He no longer has that cap out that he had in the summit and that Itachi is implied to have reached in Data Book 3, but now can surpass even Madara in his prime. Even Orochimaru, after realizing the failure of Kabuto, who was the ultimate representation of what Orochimaru wanted to become, he just yields back to see what Sasuke will go on to do. But anyway, speaking of Kabuto, even though neither he nor his brother could actually kill him, the two then could still pin Kabuto, and even when Itachi was caught off guard by the inorganic reanimation, Sasuke could actually defend Itachi and hold Kabuto back with the Enton, which pushes the idea that Sasuke is much greater than gray-haired Nagato in terms of power and ability to battle alongside Itachi. And this gray-haired Nagato, just being with Itachi, made him convinced that they can combat any shinobi in the world, at least from his perspective, which would encompass Orange Mask Obito, whose strength is of a level that Naruto would need to master the Nine Tails to defeat, fitting with Itachi's ability to fully keep up with and blitz around KCM-1 Naruto and his partner Killer B, with just his 3 Tomoe Sharingan, while also being more than capable of utilizing his Susanoo arms to match Naruto's much faster chakra arms. Furthermore, to support Kabuto being an opponent basically beyond anyone in the Akatsuki, Obito confronts Kabuto before gaining access to his Sage Mode and gaining of more Orochimaru chakra, yet Kabuto could still dodge Obito's strike, fitting with how later, once Obito is massively more powerful, he knows that if Kabuto gains an advantage, that might put him at a disadvantage when he's talking about increasing both he himself and the Edos as a whole. And I mean, I'm not going to suggest that Sage Kabuto's above White Mask Obito, and hence Sasuke too, but Kabuto is still strong enough to argue with him and stand up to him if need be, before ultimately realizing that facing the Rinnegan in that position would do him no good. And even if you posit that his confidence in fighting this Obito comes from his Edo Tensei, we know that the strongest Edo Tensei are stated to be Itachi and Nagato, who are at the top of the pyramid even in Kabuto's mind, so that doesn't really do too much, but anyway, I just thought I'd mention it. So, just through this ability to fight Kabuto, we know that he should be stronger than essentially every pre-war character aside from Hashirama, Tobirama, Minato, etc., if you are to grant them their later feats. And once said Kage are revived in chapter 618, we actually see that the 4 Zetsu host bodies then all come from Sasuke, potentially suggesting that he'd be slightly weaker, but regardless, even if that was the case, the increases he keeps getting from the EMS are still keeping him on an incline of power. Regardless, after realizing the truth of Shinobi world and its faults not being of the people but the system itself, Sasuke then vows for change, for revolution. He fights alongside his once Konoha comrades in the name of protecting Konoha once again, turning the blade away from those who made his brother suffer. No matter how powerful he became, he realized that the 5 Kage were just as corrupt and foolish as anyone else in the system. He sought the Hokage and found that perhaps the key relied not in changing people within the system, but destroying and rebuilding the system itself. And though he's still no longer completely powered by hatred, his growth doesn't slow down anytime soon. With Sasuke's stage of EMS now being referred to as the acclimated stage, which essentially posits that around here is when Sasuke has grown too much to be translated back to his previous feats, as we go on to see him actually fight alongside KCM 1.5 Naruto, who as a fighter just prior in chapter 628 was able to literally react to both Madara, Edo Madara, and White Mask Obito's fire style and MS projectiles at the same exact time, with Obito's sneak attack even being dodged by this Naruto, yet here's Sasuke literally remaining completely calm as Naruto panics, yet telling him to quit yapping, I kid you not, with his Susanoo outreacting not just this KCM 1.5 Naruto, but also the dazed KCM 2 Minato, fitting with how once the TSO was exploding and placed on Minato's shoulder, Sasuke once again was moving relatively to him through his Susanoo, and while yes, Minato is clearly nowhere near his full power, his dazed state is still actually equal to that of the second Hokage, Tobirama, with the two reacting in perfect synchronicity with one another during the Flying Raijin and reciprocal round-robin attack. You see, if you notice the theme, the group consists of 2 Hokage, Tobirama and Minato, plus 2 people of similar opposite stature who want to be Hokage but for totally different reasons. Naruto is born to be the child of prophecy and a shining light of hope in the shinobi world, a world of darkness, a savior whose determination to achieve his dreams sits beyond imagination, just like his father before him. Sasuke, on the other hand, understands the problem of the shinobi system, how dark it truly is, what it's like to lose people in his family, realizing that if he ought to be Hokage, he must take paths that others don't want to take. He must force a revolution, just like how Tobirama once did all those years ago, taking the much darker ends to justify the means approach, which Data Book 4 says Danzo inherited completely, unironically. Both Minato and Tobirama serve as narrative benchmarks for who Naruto and Sasuke are trying to become, acting as their narrative superiors, which could also be supplemented with Tobirama's chakra flex feat on Sasuke during their first confrontation. However, the Susanoo can actually allow for Sasuke to fight on par with people in a higher tier than himself, which he will later go on to do when fighting against Jubito. Sasuke now, through the development of his own power and Susanoo, can fight alongside BSM Naruto's avatar evenly, and while many people often criticize this Sasuke due to him having added the Senjutsu, this literally isn't an amp to Sasuke and is almost solely for the purpose of making it so that Sasuke could actually damage Jubito whatsoever, which Databook 4 agrees with, stating that the purpose of it was to make the Susanoo capable of effective offense. And in fact, it would actually be this tactical choice that prompted Tobirama to compliment Sasuke in that he shows more promise than Madara ever did, which Orochimaru notes in his head that Sasuke hasn't even come close to his limit based on all the intel that he's gathered throughout his life, that Sasuke will be a shinobi who surpasses Madara. Furthermore, even once the Senjutsu dissipates, he can still sync up with Naruto's avatar in the same way that EMS Madara did with Kurama all those years ago, fitting with how Madara, even after being revived from the dead, believed that taking Sasuke's eyes would be good, but he's too useful to be killed, and that Sasuke could even fight alongside Madara, as if to suggest that Sasuke could help conquer the rest of the shinobi forces, including the Hokage, Gokage, and Naruto, which probably isn't an exaggeration, to be honest, as even without their avatar states, Sasuke in just his base EMS state can tank Madara's fire style hiding in Ash Jutsu, which blew back Naruto's Sage Mode state. Now, we actually do see that Madara in his current state is capable of doing some pretty cool stuff with the Susanoo, which is something to be noted, as we both know that he and Sasuke are now of the same tier of mastery for, whatever Madara can do in his lower stages. For example, Sasuke should also just be able to do, like how Madara can use a ribcage Susanoo while evolving the right arm to a V3 and partial V3 state to throw a Susanoo blade, while conserving much of the chakra from using the whole V3 Susanoo or even higher, meaning that this final mastered EMS Sasuke is now of a tier practically equal to Naruto's peak KCM2 states, but seems to be superior in aspects like tactical control and is more useful than this Naruto without their avatars. As one thing that Sasuke has always been really good at, and it's kind of forgotten, is that when he's really low on chakra and should be counted out of the fight, he can still operate at really efficient levels. An example would be where Obito assumed that Sasuke was done for against Danzo, but Sasuke pulled through with Kenjutsu, and he still does the same thing here against Madara, outperforming this Sage Naruto. So yeah, Sasuke is a literal monster and should be stronger than most of the Hokage at this point, but does go on to actually receive a lot of Hashirama's chakra. After interacting with the Sage of Six Paths, many people have commonly assumed that he simply received the Rinnegan through such. However, it's more actually implied that the way Madara got the Rinnegan was to have a lot of Senju chakra and have a near-death experience. Sasuke got the rest of Hashirama's Edo chakra and then had a near-death experience. So the Six Paths chakra was actually likely added onto him, probably already having enough or close to enough chakra to actually gain the Rinnegan. However, we do know that from what we can gather, Hagoromo merely gave both Naruto and Sasuke Six Paths chakra, and then it manifested in ways that they would usually be used to amplify and utilize it. Naruto's manifest in a Senjutsu state, and Sasuke's manifest in an ocular-based progression state, which then has led many people to believe that Sasuke's amp sucks in comparison to Naruto's, but it's just not the case. Let's revisit when both Naruto and Sasuke gained these same style amps in the original Sage Mode and MS. Both Naruto and Sasuke had gained ever-increasing powers, but were forced to acclimate in polar opposite manners. Naruto, after obtaining that which he had to learn and adapt to the ability and control it after getting all the power at once. He had to enhance his skills, or else the power would just be too much and wouldn't really be that useful. Sasuke, on the other hand, got close to no power buff at all after attaining it, but was more and more power attributed to him as he acclimated to that which has been given to him thus far. More, evolving more linearly with his skills revolving around said ocular powers. And then at the end of the summit, the two are equals, and then both Naruto and Sasuke at the final valley were equals. So to say that Sasuke's power after just getting the Rinnegan sucked is really disingenuous. The Naruto Book of Wind 15-year anniversary guidebook actually notes that both Sasuke and Naruto gained the greatest powers. So it's not as if the two had reached or I guess gained a different power. No, they both have gained the exact same power. It just manifests progressively in different ways that led to the endpoint of equality. Anyway, just thought I'd mention that as a preface going into the final section. During the two's time in the mental scape with Hagoromo, Madara has thus gained a 10-tails power far beyond that of Obito's, with his power approaching even Hagoromo's power, aiming to potentially reach the level of his mother, the strongest of all, Kaguya Otsutsuki. With this, Madara currently battling it out with the greatest taijutsu user ever, Might Guy, whose power is dozens and dozens upon times the any Hokage ever. And not just that, but his higher forms beyond that, the Night Guy, taking the final attack that soared even into the skies. But as we all know, Madara is kind of laughing and finally shoots out a TSO at Guy to kill him, and Naruto just kicks it away, and Naruto then completely murder punches Madara, who even concedes that it's not because of his current state, but because Naruto has grown, who then uses Son Goku's chakra to use a magma-style Rasen Shuriken, cutting up the entire God Tree, terrifying Madara, who opts to use it, yet Naruto just evades it. Now, the entire reason why I mention this is because if you recall Naruto's real state that Sasuke matches, at least previously in the KCM2 form, it's actually the higher form. Yet here, Naruto is without that, and it's just the base 6-pass chakra flowing through him like how it does. So perhaps Sasuke should actually already scale above these feats physically, meaning that Sasuke could possibly be having this Madara pleading to take in the rest of the 10-tails, but I digress. And while some have suggested that Sasuke probably couldn't kick the orb, I think this is just disingenuous, as we know that he can touch Madara's chakra rods without being affected to save Tobirama, so that's kind of a similar thing. Regardless, before Sasuke reunites with Naruto, Naruto can actually feel Sasuke's 6-pass power from across the battlefield, which goes on to support the two getting the same amp, as Naruto calls it the other half of the chakra, which doesn't mean it's half of Hagoromo's chakra as people assume, but it's just that the two each have a half of the total distributed chakra. Sasuke then, in ocular-based fashion, then used the Emino-Teijikara for the first time, along with the vision that the Rinnegan actually provides, which is actually really noteworthy, as Databook 4 makes the note that Naruto's sensory allows for him to grasp the literal laws of the universe, as if to say that his sensory extends to even metaphysical constructs, but Sasuke on the other hand might just be able to see them in a similar manner, like how he later makes the remark about teleporting infinite distances, implying that he can see the finitude of that, which he can swap with. But moving back to the original note, here Sasuke can actually see the Limbo clones perfectly, which are described by Databook 4 as imperceptible phantoms that exist in a realm adjacent to, yet far removed from reality. This actually seriously begins to make Madara wonder, how can Sasuke see beings that are in realms beyond this universe, where he then charges to get rid of Sasuke to then steal his eye, yet is instantly kebabbed by Sasuke's Emino-Teijikara sword swap. Sasuke then, even though he's a prime target, begins to lead Naruto, showing that the tactical superiority, which you'll notice onward for the rest of this section, is quite prominent. Even Madara here monologues that Sasuke's got sharp intuition, calm analyzing and judgment skills, and a Sharingan just like Madara's, who then completely runs away to get Kakashi's eye, being confident that Sasuke can't teleport that far. Note this distance for later. And Sasuke then just runs over there and slices Madara in half, who compliments his raw speed. Madara is beginning to realize that he needs his other Rinnegan. These two aren't just brats, they are quite literally the strongest shinobi to ever exist. And while Sasuke regroups with Kakashi and Sakura, Naruto is quite literally pinning Limbo clones down, which are actually nigh equal to Madara in ability. So let's just recap thus far how Naruto and Sasuke's performances are in comparison to one another. So far, Naruto has technically engaged Madara more physically, tagging him, with the clone on the arm, taking the hit, plus dealing with the multiple clones, whereas Sasuke, on the other hand, has engaged less but done better in terms of damage done versus damage dealt. You see that he was able to completely evade his attacks like Naruto, but also stab Madara directly through the chest, tagging with a 6-pass Chidori while moving equally to this Naruto, plus literally slice Madara in half, all while having virtually no blood drawn, whereas Naruto can't say the same. This also isn't even accounting for the fact that Sasuke did all of the analyzation regarding the Limbo and where they were, how the clones, worked and how the clone return worked, etc. So let's not just sit here and pretend that Naruto is the clear stronger of the two, as they are both just focused on separate aspects. But if you do want to go band for band, then Sasuke is doing much better than Naruto in terms of this fight. We also then get a statement that Naruto has surpassed every Hokage, which I don't really think anyone was going to argue against, but it is there. Madara then, trying to show his ultimate power, tosses 17 meteors into the air to fall like raindrops, which many people have called to require moon levels of force, yet Sasuke is flying through the meteors with his perfect Susanoo, just slicing them up. Naruto then tosses out multiple Bijuu Rasen Shuriken, yet Sasuke carelessly flies through them, immediately realizing that the Limbo clone's ground pressure and Chibaku Tensei air pressure was so that he could launch the infinite Tsukiyomi. Once again, Sasuke has saved the entire squad, using his Rinnegan Amp Susanoo. And look, I'm not anti-Kakashi or anti-Sakura agenda, but Sasuke just ratios both of them very hard right here, telling him to just shut up while he leads the squad. Then, Madara is betrayed and Kaguya is born out of his body, taking in an incredible amount of thick, dark chakra, which continues for this sequence until Madara's body ultimately collapses under Kaguya's sheer chakra volume, which actually should sound consistent with her dimensional swap ability being stated in Databook 4 to use so much chakra that Kaguya is the only person capable of ever utilizing it, as this isn't just, taking people to a different universe. It's quite literally swapping the positions of the universes themselves and their corresponding time spaces. Hence to why Sasuke remarks that her chakra is far greater than Madara's ever was, which would include his three-eyed form. He even states that he couldn't even believe that such a person like this ever existed. Now, mind you, this is the same Sasuke who literally fought Jubito and Madara, performing quite well in both fights, but more importantly remained completely calm and was confident in winning. But here, he's actually mesmerized by her sheer chakra. They then begin to gain a foothold within the volcano in the lava planet, where Sasuke is the first to react through his summoning hawk, which also then grabs Naruto, saving him. Sasuke then saves Naruto once again, who in all fairness is focusing on saving Kakashi, who's currently got the pressure of both saving Sakura and Obito. Sasuke, in doing so, was able to block over 20 of Kaguya's Senbon, which in most cases throughout the series are much faster than the user, like in Sage Jiraiya's case where it's his fastest Sage mode attack, or in the Chidori case where it's the fastest base Chidori variant, which is pretty impressive for Sasuke physically. I would also like to preface that Naruto's physical performances throughout this fight are really impressive, but I want you to keep this in mind. Could Sasuke have also been in this position to have a chance at doing it? Just note that. Note those words. You'll see what I mean. And then you'll notice that Sasuke just didn't have opportunities, and regardless, I want to establish that we know that Sasuke's Susanoo thus far was equal to Naruto's Kurama avatar without it being in its full perfect form, so it should still have some slight superiority, but even more importantly, it should scale above any feat that Naruto performs physically on Kaguya in just his base normal state. Sasuke then gets saved by Naruto, who learns his levitation ability. Kaguya then charges at Naruto, Kakashi, and Sakura, where he then can actually briefly clash with a minor vacuum fist before being blown back. But in doing so, he is hoping Sasuke can come in and help, showing how Naruto doesn't think he's the powerhouse of this squad. Nobody does. As I mentioned in the last section, Naruto's raw exertion of power is just slightly above Sasuke, so it just gives off that appearance, at least to the reader. Sasuke is then completely blasted out of his Susanoo due to Kaguya likely trying harder, as the previously applied principle should be in play, and she was smiling against Naruto, yet Sasuke can actually still react to the blowback and save himself, which was even flinging Naruto out of control. Kakashi then adds some pretty solid stock to Kaguya, stating that this is a totally different scale. She's like a god, showing how far she truly surpasses the previous threats. The difference between Kaguya and Three-Eyed Madara isn't like Jubito in Sage Mode, where arguments can be made, maybe tactics would help. No, she is a literal god compared to them, hence to why Zetsu calls her God Almighty. The two then utilize the harem jutsu, which unironically almost completely worked, as we see that it distracted her, and while Naruto turned his back, Sasuke covered the entire distance and swapped Kaguya with the puff smoke, nearly sealing her completely until she completely swaps the dimension out from under him, moving to the ice planet. Now I suppose, just like we did earlier, let's compare Naruto and Sasuke's performances, as they actually didn't do all that much. So we can do just a few categories, like how they did against Kaguya and how they benefited each other. The former category, Naruto had 2 direct interactions with her combatively and Sasuke had 3, although the shared one in the latter, which, while yes, Naruto did do the main harem jutsu, it was originally Sasuke's remark that they needed to create the opening. He used the Amaterasu for the bait and also did the Amenote Jakara swap, so I'm just going to give that to both. If you want to be picky, it should go to Sasuke though. Naruto then had one other interaction, it was in the vacuum fist, which is implied by Databook 4 to be one of her strongest attacks, although he does get blown back. On the other hand, Sasuke fought an arguably more serious Kaguya in his Susanoo and got completely blown out, but then saved Naruto, reacting better to the blowback. Sasuke was also able to protect Naruto, plus react to, plus stop most of the enhanced Senbon, so I'm going to give those sequences to Sasuke. As for how the two interacted with one another, I think this is actually clearly a Sasuke win. As while yes, Naruto did save Sasuke once initially and then a second time when Zetsu tried to take over Sasuke, Sasuke saved Naruto like 3 different times, so I'm going to give this to Sasuke, meaning that Sasuke did slightly better than Naruto in the lava realm. Then, the two are shifted in the ice realm, which makes Kakashi argue that it's so crazy, it's like a genjutsu, where both Naruto and Sasuke are trapped in a very thick layer of ice. Probably chakra enhanced eyes, let's be honest here. Kaguya then gets out, but Naruto and Sasuke are stuck, and we see that Naruto's TSOs that can literally negate the properties of fighters themselves are just trudging through the ice, moving barely, and all of a sudden, the base Amaterasu completely melts the ice instantly, where Sasuke then just used the Enton to shatter the entire block of ice, showing literally just how insane the Enton Kagetsuchi or Amaterasu really are as a whole at this point in the series, which are usually said to be fodder as they can be countered frequently, but the same can just be said about something like Kamui, for example. Literally everybody who faces Kamui can counter it in the same hyper-specific manner. Bugs, bombs, rain, transcendent space-time ninjutsu, but whatever, I digress. The Amaterasu and Enton are still really powerful. Now, what's actually kind of funny is that Zetsu and Kaguya kind of agree that Zetsu then, after seeing that, was like, nah, we just gotta separate him at this point, which she then does, and Sasuke is going to be completely stranded on the desert planet for a solid chronological portion of the battle. And this is where Naruto starts pulling some more pretty solid feats, such as reacting to her portal hands, completely clashing with their minor vacuum fist through his boil release, you know, summoning like 1,000 clones, you know, reacting to more of her vacuum fist, engaging her in taijutsu from all sides, flying into her root time space with Obito's Kamui aid, and actually worrying Zetsu, who literally telling her not to engage this Naruto clone, where she then just one-shots him with the ash bone. And as the two begin to battle it out on the ice planet, Zetsu is reminding Kaguya not to let Naruto reunite with Sasuke, who throughout this whole sequence is literally just shooting techniques at the wall to see what sticks. And we know this because he is sweating profusely, and he actually states that nothing seems to work, implying that he's trying numerous techniques until Sakura's jacket and Obito's Kamui allowed for him to get into the Genesis dimension. We then see them cut back to where Naruto's clones are getting all skewered by Kaguya's ash bones, where Sasuke then shows up. And guess what Kaguya does immediately? Swaps the dimensions to the gravity dimension to hopefully mitigate some of their combined abilities and physicals, as she immediately just fires the ash bones, which both Naruto and Sasuke dodge, although Sasuke actually does make the note that his eye hasn't recharged, which does potentially confirm the idea that he was using it in the desert dimension, but I digress. And as Obito finally makes the choice of his life, waging death at the cost of being Hokage, walking ahead of his comrades, dying for them, Zetsu then states that Kaguya needs to go to the Genesis dimension immediately so that she can recover there, as her attack to kill Naruto and Sasuke failed, and she can't afford to fight the two at the same time once again. As Obito accepts the idea and the actual punishment for his crime, Sasuke's power returns and he instantly teleports to Kaguya's left with a non-six-pass Chidori armed, forcing her to literally dimension swap at that moment, flying and dodging the strike. As Obito takes his last breath, Sasuke goes on taking the distractions for this sequence. We then see that we get some pretty good stock as he's actually capable of blocking a hit from this Kaguya, which could potentially allude to her looming fatigue by this point, and then Naruto literally gives the most blatant example of a mental lamp in the series. So no, Naruto isn't really capable of blitzing Kaguya normally, and if so, then more stocks for a Susanoo Sasuke, I suppose, who is then kicked out of the Susanoo through 4 vacuum fists at the same time, so no wonder. Naruto then uses his Super Biju Rasen Shuriken technique, which is literally his ultimate technique, which doesn't even harm Kaguya, but just completely disrupts the aspects of her chakra, something Sasuke naturally wouldn't really be able to do or have the chance to do, alluding back to what I mentioned earlier, that Naruto does stuff that Sasuke just doesn't have the opportunities to do, and they're usually hyper specific at that, which in turn makes Naruto seem more impressive when he's really not. DMS Kakashi then swoops in, taking up Sakura, which Naruto originally thought was Sasuke, potentially implying that he thought it could be something that Sasuke could do, although Sasuke doesn't really have this confusion and instantly asks whose Susanoo it is, but it was probably a pretty solid question considering Sasuke has been demeaning Kakashi this entire time and Kakashi didn't have the Sharingan the last time he saw him throughout this entire sequence. However, I already have a video coming out soon on Kakashi versus Sasuke for these forms specifically, so just be on the lookout for that. And then Naruto and Sasuke finally have her baited into the seal position once again, forcing her to realize that it's too fast for her to swap the dimensions, and even notes that she can't go into the ice world because Indra's reincarnate possesses the Amaterasu. We then get help from Sakura. Team 7 has truly grown from 3 little knuckleheads performing chalkboard pranks on their Jonin sensei and having eating competitions to saving humankind once and for all. However, as we all know, Sasuke's power and displays of such don't stop at that point, but go on to the greatest battle to ever happen. Of the 2 strongest shinobi to ever live, Sasuke Uchiha versus Naruto Uzumaki. Now, onto our last, but certainly not least form of Sasuke, being Sasuke in the Final Valley, who technically still is Rinnegan Sasuke insofar as Mastered and early EMS Sasuke are still EMS Sasuke. I'm just separating it here due to Sasuke now fundamentally being an entirely different fighter than when he first awakened the Rinnegan, gaining 6-pass power, and it's also, there's a distinction between Rinnegan Sasuke and Final Valley Sasuke in terms of how people critique the earlier Rinnegan Sasuke, so I just want that to be noted and why I'm separating the two. But now he's actually acclimated to this level, the level of his 6-pass power, and has even taken on the Biju, actually being able to control all 9 of them with a single glance with his Rinnegan in the manga, which seems to offer an enhancement to the abilities which flow through or are derived from that specific eye's ocular chakra. However, many people seem to just dismiss this as Sasuke needing this or relying on the Biju, as if to say they aren't part of his arsenal in this fight, but they are. And Naruto, even more so than Sasuke, relied on all of the other Biju's power in the Madara fight by having Son Goku enhance his Rasen Shuriken with Magma Style, and against Kaguya, such as when Kokuo activates Boil Release for Naruto. I mean, Naruto literally uses all of them for his strongest normative attack, being the Sage Art Super Biju Rasen Shuriken. So let's not just downplay Sasuke because of this, as he and Naruto are already extremely comparable, as I've demonstrated thus far, seeing as Naruto has gained more skills with his power, and Sasuke has too become quite familiar with the Rinnegan's abilities, as he proceeds to then place each of the Biju into the Chibaku Tensei, something that drained the Chakra Beast Nagato's life force from a single Chibaku Tensei. And this ability is also much better in Sasuke's case, as it uses the target as the core, so this is actually a really high level win con for really most fights that he'll get put into. With that being said, some YouTubers like Six have touched on Sasuke being underrated in this form, Although my buddy TG has done the topic justice on his channel, going over a read through of this fight, and that's all it is. It's simply trying to see how Sasuke compares to someone he literally fought, so I'll try not to take too long on this specific section, seeing as the video is well over an hour long already, so I'll just discuss the entailments of Sasuke's feats and what they actually mean for his power, not just in relation to Naruto, but if he was fighting a neutral opponent or another high tier character. Sasuke opens the fight with a sense of progressive pressure, seeing how his once dear friend reacts to the fire style, and then the Chidori, which is only a base Chidori as opposed to the stronger 6-Paz Chidori. After he teleports behind Naruto, slapping him away, he then pivots to a V3 Susanoo, firing out 3 arrows at Naruto, which he then blocks at TSOs, where Sasuke then clears the residual smoke with the full-blown perfect Susanoo, which Naruto essentially concedes that is above his base form by no longer appealing to aspects of the avatar like the hand as he did against the fire style, but the full-blown avatar, and we see that they actually clash blades equally, with his tails which are more offensive than his strikes, which would only really be able to clash with the hilt of the blade. Sasuke then tells Naruto he doesn't disagree, and just that if he continues to play defense and stall, then he'll just die, which all really goes to support the idea that the perfect Susanoo Sasuke is above Naruto's base state and should scale above all of his Kaguya clashing feats by virtue of that very concept. Furthermore, this also extends to his base state, obviously, which was able to slice up 6-Paz Madara before, but I digress. In regards to the two's avatar, I think these two specific forms, just like how it was in their original form, Sasuke is superior to Naruto, where he can actually clash with a Biju Bomb, something much more powerful than the Rasengan. Now, Sasuke actually does make another really interesting note. He actually believes that he has many options in his current state, believing that he can reincarnate due to this level of hate that he has now, like how his predecessor Indra once did thousands of years ago. And after that clash and monologue, Sasuke states that he is the strongest in the world, merging all of the disseminated chakra into one, using chakra control on the same level of Hagoromo, and Sasuke literally just starts beating up multiple avatars at the same time, and finally Naruto emerges with the 6-Paz Ashura avatar with a Biju Rasen Shuriken and a typical one in hand, and then clashes equally with Indra's arrow, despite having a nature advantage, meaning that Sasuke probably was stronger than Naruto, at least in this sequence, who then falls down and wastes his Amaterasu, and still manages to fend off Naruto's Jump Fest, Chidoriing one of the clones, and tanking Naruto's hit to the face. And now, I'm going to say that Naruto low-key might have won if he just didn't trip and accidentally hit the ground with his Rasengan. The two then slug it out in equal taijutsu, and take note, they actually have been fighting all day, as the morning sun was just rising at the start of the battle, and now the sun sets, waiting for a new dawn of shinobi history, one decided by the winner of this battle. Kurama still helps Naruto with chakra, which is absorbed by Sasuke, yet Sasuke, just as he is about to win the fight, deactivates the Sharingan, looking down on his one and only friend. Sasuke then clashes with Naruto one last time, and as the sun rises, Sasuke realizes who he is, because he understands who Naruto is to him, his one and only friend. And with that, Sasuke admits it, he lost, showing his eyes with no Sharingan, no power, looking upon the hope that is to come of a world that is to come. Shinobi history has been decided. Power will always reign, it breeds conflict, but as the river representing such narrows, the two hands of their predecessors unite, as do they. Bonds will be the bridge over that river for the rest of history. Okay, anyway, sorry about the little outro. I just had to do that. But anyway, if you guys did enjoy this video, then subscribe. It took a lot of time to write. I mean, I have like literally 25 pages of a script here, over 13,000 words. You guys can see how long this video actually is. So yeah, I'm gonna go to bed. You guys have a great night. But more importantly than that, may God bless you all. Love you guys.